They just said, okay, yeah, we understand we're not live yet, so they couldn't get on.
Okay.
Is Anshu coming?
I believe so from our text earlier, but she hasn't said anything right now.
Okay. We're going to start recording now,
Thank you.
and then we'll go live. And
Okay, I think we are live. I see the participants filling in. So I will call to order the Monday, June 15th meeting of the Westford School Committee. And I will start with, again, some instruction for participants who wish to ask us questions or comment on anything. At the bottom of your screen, you will find a Q&A down at the bottom, and you may type in a question and I will read them all, or I will answer them online. Sometimes both. We try to consolidate questions so that we're not asking the same one over and over. The chat is actually something that's there, but we don't use. So please use the Q&A if you have questions. Please also remember to mute your microphone, panelists, and anyone else when not speaking. It just cuts down on background noise. So I will ask participants. It looks like we have several, 19 attendees. I will ask if any of them have anything they'd like to ask for public session, public comment, excuse me. If not, we'll move to recognitions. Okay, so I don't see any. We can always jump back if we need to. So don't worry about that. I keep an eye on that throughout the meeting. So Bill, do you have recognitions?
Yes, I do. As you know, at the last school committee meeting, we recognized some of the people who were retiring. We have another list of wonderful employees who are retiring, some after many years of dedicated and loyal service. We are honoring the retirement of Joellen Baer. Joellen has only been with us for 4 years. She was our student data specialist, but has contributed significantly to the assembly and aggregation of data and reporting to the state, all of the civil rights reports. She's done an excellent job, and we wish her a happy, healthy retirement. This next person needs no description. Richie Crocker. Richie, I'm not sure if Richie is on with us tonight or not. I thought he was going to be, but Richie has been with us for 25 years. And when you talk about a person who has made a difference, Richie is one of those people. He has been available night and day. I've been with Richie more than a few times at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, operating a flow machine to suck up water after a pipe broke, whether it was at the high school or one of the elementary and middle schools. I don't think any student missed a day of school because Richie would always assemble a group of custodians, sometimes the fire department with their equipment, to make sure that we were able to have school that day. He was out in the middle of the night with our maintenance staff, plowing all the time. I've ridden around in the schools with him numerous times. His phone rings about 15 times every 30 seconds with people looking for repairs or parts or lumber or plumbing supplies, electrical supplies. So can't thank Richie enough. He has been an extraordinary contributor to our school system and to the entire town for that fact, because we've shared our maintenance staff on numerous occasions with the town. Congratulate Jane Locke also. Jane is a administrative assistant. She has been between the Christopher and the Robinson School for a number of years. Outstanding worker, very polite, always good with parents and staff and children, which is very important. And 18 long dedicated years in a job that's pretty thankless oftentimes, because you're dealing with a lot of issues between disciplinary issues that parents are a little bit agitated over, or a forgotten school lunch where she has to call the parents and sort of act as an intermediary. We thank Daryl Shackleton. Also, Daryl has had numerous administrative assistant positions in the school system, most recently in our payroll department. Extraordinarily loyal, extraordinary hard worker. Comes from a large family, all of whom went through the Westford Public Schools, and We wish her a wonderful, wonderful retirement. And finally, a person who, talk about an unsung hero, was with us for 33 years, began just a little bit after I started in the school system, Dottie Wagner. Dottie has been an administrative assistant in the special education office, has done an enormous amount of work and very detailed work. And so to Dottie, Daryl, Jane, Richie, and Joellen, we wish you the happiest and healthiest of retirements and can't thank you enough for making the Westford Public Schools what it is today.
Thank you. And I want to introduce our our current students who we are sadly saying goodbye to. They're off, I see that. But I believe that they are here to introduce us to the new representatives, which have been elected. And I think Chris is bringing them up right now. So does one of you want to introduce the new Brian and Hannah? Hannah will have to get her video going.
Yeah, I think Hannah's having some trouble with hers, but I don't know, Brian, do you want to introduce yourself or?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Brian. I was a junior this year. I don't know if I'm still a
Mhm.
junior or not, but I'm excited to be like the school committee representative for next year. I've been to a bunch of the meetings, like just with the general student council, and they're always fun. So excited for more.
And I see Hannah has joined us. Hannah, do you want to say hello? Tell us what year are you?
I'm a sophomore, and I'm just really excited to make the students' voices heard and participate. So,
All right. We'll probably be starting in remote mode for you. We'll get you right up to speed though in the fall. So
If we may,
welcome. Yep,
Oh,
go ahead,
I'm
Bill.
sorry. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, I recognize Brian. I know he's been around. And Hannah, did you ever come to any of the student meetings?
I think I came to one in the fall,
Okay.
but I don't think I got the chance to go to any others.
All right. Bill, what did you want to add?
Well, I just wanted to thank Ragav and Anshu. They are very difficult to follow. Your input at school committee meetings, your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions were always greatly respected by all of us. And because there's a lot of depth to both of you. And Brian and Hannah, we look forward to working along with you. We want you to feel comfortable working with the school committee and with the administration. And anytime you have any ideas or suggestions, our doors are always open. So please feel free to contact us.
Thank
And I already
you.
gave them the rundown. I already explained to them that the expectation is that they stay through the entire meeting, no matter how long it goes, that they must never leave early. No, I tried to give them the nuance of, there's a certain point at which everybody understands if you have to leave and do homework. And I'm sure Raghav and Anshu hopefully gave you the rundown on that as well. So it's really cool to see you guys, and we will miss Raghav and Anshu very much.
Yes, thank you for your years of service. And I always found it very helpful and enlightening when the students shared from their side of things. One of my favorites. And Anshu, where are you off to? We were talking to Ragav before.
I'm going to St. Bonaventure.
And are you going to have campus, or are you going to have to start remote?
They said they were going to go, we're going to go because it's a really small, so hopefully that's still happening.
Very good. Committee, anything else?
Congratulations to both of you, and thank you for being here.
Mm.
All right, and
Thank you. Thank
we
you.
have one more recognition, Bill.
Yes, we want to recognize Megan Eckroth for her 3 years of service to the school committee. It's not an easy job. Lots of phone calls, lots of discussions, and we thank her for 3 very good years of service in the Westford School Committee.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks, Megan, for serving on Capitol so diligently. I always knew you were there representing us well, and all the other committees, policy. What other committees did you serve on? Those were, the capital was the big one.
Healthy Westford for a year, which I think Sean has stepped in now on that one. So I did that for a year, and then capital for 2 and policy for 2.
And how can we forget clerk? Secretary.
And secretary. Yeah, somehow I didn't pass that job on, even though that's supposed to be the newbie job. So
Right. Right.
someone has to do that now. But thank you very much. And it's been absolutely an honor to serve our town and our school community. And I've loved working with all of you. And I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Gloria.
Thank you, Megan, for 3 wonderful years. You have an eye for not only art, but also detail and wording, and you always caught my typos in policies and found better ways to word things, and nobody can read a spreadsheet like you, and it's been an honor and a joy to serve with you. So thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
will miss you.
Very, very sweet.
We will miss having you at the table with us all, or at the computer, as the case may be now.
I think I still get to join you, even though this is the last official meeting of mine.
Yes.
I will still be at town meeting on Saturday with all of you. So I'll get to see you all in person for that.
That will be good.
Dress
All right.
for warm weather.
Yes, yes,
In very warm weather.
yes.
Any other recognitions? Yes, so that is a good reminder that we do have town meeting on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Committee, we will probably be meeting just slightly before that to get our seats. But my understanding is we will be sitting socially distant at the front of the arena. So, anything else before we move on to superintendent update? Okay. Students, welcome to stay and listen in, or you can tap out if you wish. Don't feel bad about tapping out this is the last of our meeting, so we've got some business to take care of. All right, Bill, update?
Yes, we want to congratulate Joy, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Chow. Joy has been awarded the Scholastic Art and Writing Award for the 2020 school year. She has received a National Silver Medal, which only a very few junior high and middle school students in the entire nation receive this honor. Joy was very gracious also in wanting to thank Mrs. Zalchewski and all her teachers who have greatly helped her over the last 3 years. She's indicated that she's very much enjoyed being a student at the Stony Brook School. Normally, that award is given at Carnegie Hall, but because of the virus impact, there was a virtual national ceremony with several famous authors and Jennifer Garner, the actress, presenting the awards virtually. And so, we congratulate Joy. That is an extraordinary honor that she has earned for her talent. And so we look forward to following her in her high school career. Just as you said, 9 o'clock town meeting. We hope it goes smoothly. It's supposed to be a very warm day, and the field heats up quite quickly because of the black rubber beads, and so hopefully we'll be in and out in a reasonable amount of time. We were just informed about now just about an hour ago from the Commissioner's office that the application for the Student Opportunity Act funds, which was originally in April, has now been moved out to August 18th because of the budget uncertainties at the federal level and also at the state level. We are prepared to submit that application, and we will submit it before August 18th, but this is about the third or fourth change in the deadline for that particular grant. We have our 40-member reopening team divided into 4 subcommittees. The subcommittees will start meeting, some this week, some next week. We'll be having leadership team meetings about once every other week throughout the summer to talk about updates. We are awaiting the guidelines from the Commissioner of Education, yet to be distributed to superintendents across the state. Our final guidelines for summer school programming, and it's very late for that to be issued right now. I understand the uncertainties. The commissioner is trying to consult as frequently as possible with public health officials to make sure he makes the right decision in terms of in school or remote or some combination thereof, not only for the summer program, but for the fall. The fall notification is anticipated to be released a little bit later this month, although he did indicate it could be later this week or early next week. I'm just not sure if that's going to happen. And if it does, stand by for perhaps some modifications. So we understand the difficulties the commissioner is dealing with. And as we go deeper and deeper in terms of either trying to implement a summer program or planning for the 2020-2021 school year, it becomes progressively more difficult the later the message is delivered. So we're hoping it comes to us, comes quickly. And finally, this has been a difficult year for our students and our staff and our parents. Never before have we had a school year like this. And so I want to thank everyone for really pulling up the bootstraps, doing whatever needed to be done. Parents sacrificing extraordinarily, teachers working 3 and 4 times more in terms of now reorienting themselves with technology and rebranding lessons in a remote manner. Their work has been outstanding. All of the administrators, Kerry, Ingrid, our central office, Courtney, our central office staff, everyone has really stepped up to the plate. And with that, I want to wish everyone a wonderful, healthy, happy, safe summer of relaxation and enjoyment. And look forward to seeing you hopefully back sometime in the school environment in the fall so that we can see you in the hallways, see you in the classrooms, and see you in the playgrounds. And so wishing you the very best through summers. And that is it. Yeah.
Bill, we have a question a little bit more on the reopening. Do we have any, I mean, I know that we're all just guessing still at this point until the commissioner comes out, but we do have a question. Will there be parent representation on that reopening committee?
Well, what we're looking to do is we're looking to have at least 2 remote sessions with parents where they can interact with us. And ask any of the subcommittee facilitators what we're planning or what we know in terms of information, and provide any input to us. We think it's probably best to handle it that way so that more people can be involved instead of just saying, well, we'll pick 2 or 3 to be on the subcommittee. I'd rather, if we have 50 people who want to question us, sometimes like the superintendent's open houses, sometimes we have 2 people, sometimes we have 22 people. And I'd like to open it up to as many viewpoints as possible.
Megan, I see a hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that, and I obviously I'm just one opinion, but I do think that it's tricky to get a true representation of the entire parent community with just having a handful of parents represented on that committee, because everybody has completely unique circumstances, whether that's related to the ages of their children, their working environment, or their spouse's working environment, or single parent, or how remote learning worked well for their child or not, or anything. And so, Bill, I know you had mentioned, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, that you were thinking about sending out a survey to gather information from parents.
That's going out this week.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Because
yes, we just.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said several of us have been reviewing the questions, adding some, maybe tweaking them a little bit, but it's just about all ready to go out.
Okay, I think that you had mentioned that, and I think that's a great way for everybody to feel like they're a stakeholder in this and give their feedback. And I would hope that that would be gathering feedback on some of the important topics that will also potentially impact financially or plans. I've heard some discussions amongst parents about, well, if it's completely remote, you know, I would hope to supplement with my own homeschooling sort of whatever, or a homeschooling program, or this or that, or no, I hope to have them in school full time. I know from a busing perspective, certainly it will absolutely affect ridership should we go back. And so I think you had mentioned that those questions, Bill, would be part of the survey to gather from the community perspective on how parents would feel about putting their children on buses. So that's good to hear it's going out. I do think that that's the best way to gather a broader spectrum of feedback.
And we'll share that feedback with you as soon as we get it back and aggregate the results.
Bill, will that parent survey also allow parents to give you a follow-up or a second view of how they felt remote learning went? So that I know that we did that survey kind of early on just to sort of take the temperature. Will there be questions for follow-up for parents?
Well, we really hadn't planned for the survey. What I see happening though is one of our subcommittees is teaching and learning. And I think parents will have at least one or two opportunities during the summer to interact with that subcommittee, like all other subcommittees of our reopening committee, and share their thoughts with them. It would be actually very good to be able to hear it live from a parent instead of just something in writing. And so we're looking forward to that interaction as being very helpful and very informative to us.
Okay. Go ahead, Ming-Chen.
So one of the questions in the survey probably is to ask the parents if they plan to enroll their kids in the school system, if it's a combination of remote learning and in-house learning, because I heard a lot of comments from multiple parents that they probably will not enroll their students in the school system if it involves remote learning, because it doesn't work for them at all.
Yes, we're asking that question because we need to be prepared for everything. We need to be prepared to know how many parents would be willing to send their children back to school if the commissioner says that's what is allowable. And we need to know how many parents feel comfortable with remote learning, because that affects technology, it affects the preparation of our teaching staff, affects how we deploy the teaching staff, the arrangement of classrooms in terms of furnishings, just all sorts of operations. And that's what our operations subcommittee is looking at. Kerry's facilitating the teaching and learning. I'm facilitating the operations. Joan Mitchell is facilitating the hygiene protocols. And Wendy Pikachuk is facilitating the social emotional well-being of both students and staff, that subcommittee. So we're going to find out as much as we can, Ming Chen, from the parents.
Bill, how will parents be notified of these subcommittee meetings and be notified that they have an opportunity to submit content or to participate?
We'll send a communication out via ConnectEd about a week in advance, just letting parents know that we will be holding a remote meeting. They are welcome to attend. And here's we may not have all subcommittees. I've got to talk with the administrators about that. We might have the 4 subcommittees. We might only have a couple at a time, but we'll figure that out, and we'll let parents know enough in advance so they can plan to participate if they wish.
Megan, did you have a question? No? Okay. I see there's more.
Sorry, I'm good.
There's more questions. If a family chooses not to enroll, can we explain to them the process to apply for homeschooling?
Yes, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Because and the important thing to note is that the Department of Education holds the school committee of every city and town responsible for educating every child within its borders, whether they attend the public schools or they homeschool, or that they attend some private school. We have to account for those students in various reports. So any family in Westford that is interested in homeschooling their child has to submit an application with a detailed curriculum and what type of assessment they will be undertaking. That comes through the through Kerry's office and is approved through that office.
Now I actually do have a question. Can I ask real quick?
Sure, go ahead. I'm just reading the questions coming in.
So Bill, if a parent or family comes up with a question or topic that they want to know or have concerns about that is either prior to the survey coming out or outside of the scope of that survey, who is the best person to address those questions to?
They can send, I would suggest they send that question to myself, to Kerry, and to Nina Mangan, my administrative assistant.
Okay.
And that way, if it applies to a specific school and we need to check with the principal or assistant principal, we can do that as quickly as possible.
And let's see, one more question on the reopening committee. Will the members of the reopening committee be published? Will you be able to maybe put that list together and we can put it in our packet as to what administrators and teachers and staff are participating in that committee?
Yes, we're glad to do that. I can do that this week.
Okay. And then we have a budget question. So I'll ask this now, but it may be that something that Ingrid's going to cover. What money has been spent in this budget year to prepare for next year? Have we invested any more in technology or training to prepare us for what we're looking at?
Well, we have, Ingrid, were you going to ask that?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. We are preparing to purchase some technology. One of the survey questions, in fact, is do parents have internet access? I believe that's on the survey. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Ingrid and Kerry. We are talking about right now what type of professional development. As you know, that's why we have the 3 days prior to the start of the school year next year, August 31st, September 1st, and September 2nd is professional development days, so that once we know what the plan is from the commissioner, we can sort of sculpt the appropriate professional development for our staff. Let's see, what was the remainder of that question, Avery?
Oh, sorry. Have we invested in technology and training? And I think you sort of covered it that we're going to be doing some PD, but have we spent any money in this fiscal year looking ahead?
Well, we have spent some money on technology. Of course, we have a capital request that's, we're waiting to see what the outcome is at Saturday's town meeting. We're hoping it's approved. We are buying personal protection equipment. Now that hopefully will be charged back to the CARES Act monies, but we're looking at masks, we're looking at plastic shields, we're looking at coverings. We had a meeting with Jeff Stevens and Gail Johnson from the health department, along with Joan Mitchell and Cheryl Carpenter, two of our nurses, about a week and a half ago, trying to cover as completely as possible what is the protective equipment that we're going to have to buy and in what quantities are we going to have to purchase it to, let's say, cover the first 12 weeks and then project forward for even longer period of time. Ingrid, I don't know if you want to chip in on that with any information.
I think, if you don't want to get caught in a kind of chicken egg situation because the guidance hasn't really been officially given out. I know there have been some calls Bill and Carrie have been on, and it's like, oh, we need these things, and then the next week they're like, oh, well, those aren't really as effective. So we're trying to, be prudent as well and not speculate. I was on a call today with Paul Fox and with the DESE, and the state is working to aggregate all the PPE purchases. So by Friday, they have given us yet another spreadsheet to fill out on our estimated need over a 12-week period. And, they've provided some guidance of, per student, per staff, how many they recommend. And then just internally, the conversations we've had, with Courtney and the nurses and transportation.
The one thing we want to be,
the
one thing we want to be careful of with the bulk purchasing plan that the state is developing is that it doesn't take 2, 3, and 4 weeks longer than what we could do in terms of purchasing on our own, as long as the unit prices are fairly equivalent. The deeper we go into the summer, I'm afraid that the more of a shortfall there is in critical personal protection equipment, and I don't want to put us in that position. So, Paul and Ingrid and I have talked from a purchasing perspective about if the unit prices are reasonably comparable to what the state is capable of realizing, then let's go on a strike on our own and purchase the equipment instead of going into the state collaborative. Let's do it, because I don't want to take any chances of having things come in 5-6 weeks after the fact.
I think we all set with, I don't see any other questions. We had one question, but it looks like our student representatives have left the building. There was a question as to how student representatives are chosen. And if I'm correct, it's the election through student council. Is that correct? High school parents? Okay. So yes, it is an election through student council that allows you to join our table. I think, Carrie, we want to hear from you.
Thank you. Just building off what the superintendent had mentioned, we are starting our subcommittees, and he has put me in charge of chairing the Teaching and Learning Reopening Subcommittee. And our first meeting is a week from today on Monday. It's a 14-person subcommittee, and we are very excited about the work that is in front of us. Certainly, we wish the circumstances were different and we could go back to normal. It's not the reality, so we are looking forward to leaning into the challenge and coming up with something great for our students. We have learned so much over the past few months, from whether it be survey data or anecdotal data, just through our experiences, as well as the survey that will be going out to parents. And we look forward to taking all of that information and making a plan, whether it be fully remote, fully in school, or something in between with a hybrid model, and of course proposing to the superintendent and then ultimately to the school committee. So we're excited about that. We also did expand the survey to include students. So on Friday afternoon, the high school administration surveyed our high school students to ask about their experiences with the remote learning. And we've had about 450 or so student responses so far. And it is great to hear their feedback. A lot of it was open-ended, which makes it more difficult to sift through, but at the same time, it's nice to hear the student voices and hearing them express their concerns or their feelings about the experience. And just like the parent data, the survey data so far, and it's early, is very split. We had just over 50% express very positive feelings about remote learning, stating that they felt grateful for it, happy, optimistic were some of the terms that were used many times, while just under 50%, it's about 49%, had shared negative feelings that they felt frustrated or bored. So we'll take that information. We do know that it's very difficult to come up with something that will meet the liking and the needs of absolutely everybody, or the preferences, I should say, but we will do the best that we can, and the feedback that we receive is very helpful. We also have some webinars coming up. The DESE, their department, the Center for Instructional Support, is hosting a series of webinars for instructional leaders with strategies on planning and assessing and adjusting instruction to address the anticipated learning gaps, either caused or exacerbated by the school closures. So I look forward to looking at that, because we know even if miraculously things could go back to normal, it still wouldn't be normal, because there would be a residual impact from the March 13th closure. But all of that said, social emotional well-being of students continues to be our priority. And today I had a conversation with Pete Hall, who we've been working with him in grades 6 through 12 throughout this entire school year. And his focus is on creating trauma-invested schools and classrooms and fostering resilient learners. And so we're looking to try to incorporate some of his work, because he has since adapted his work to tailor it toward the situation right now with the school closures and how that can impact students emotionally. And that will be infused into preparation for when we open the doors. And I just want to also publicly thank Wendy Pikacek, Director of Grades 6 through 12 Guidance. She had put together a message that went out to families called The Changing Landscape of College Admissions. And if you recall, last time she was here, she was trying to alleviate some people's fears of how will this closure impact my child's ability to get into college. And I think it was Chris's suggestion that something go out to all families just to help them. And she had a very thorough and succinct message that talked about the additional flexibility that's in the admissions process at most colleges right now, which includes optional testing for SATs and ACTs, and understanding that most people were in credit, no credit scenarios in the last third of the year. They understand that co-curricular activities were canceled. So I think that that was a great suggestion, but also Wendy had put together a document with many, many resources, and we hope that students and families find that valuable.
All right, thank you. I see hands up. Megan, did you have a question for Carrie?
I did. And it's a question that I received from a parent, and it's a little bit sensitive in nature. I'm not sure quite how to answer this, but it's something that I think people are curious about. I think that there's an understanding that at the state level that the guidance for what the fall looks like will be state mandated. And so I know we've talked about in the past, but if you could sort of speak to the idea that district to district, neighboring communities will be looking at similar models in terms of structure. I think people have a great concern that there is a disparity, could be a disparity in what school looks like in the fall. And the sort of sensitive part of that question comes from this parent wants to understand what factors go into that decision. And one of those is the teachers and the staffing. And is the MTA, the Mass Teachers Association, giving guidance to every individual teachers association, just like the state is giving guidance to school districts, so that there will be continuity across districts in terms of what is happening and agreed to, should there be some sort of hybrid or all remote with regards to synchronous and asynchronous learning?
Yeah, well, Bill and I were on a webinar with the commissioner, a conference call with the commissioner on Friday, and he did mention that MTA is involved in many of these discussions. There's that 54, 58 person committee who was involved in creating this. However, he did mention that a lot of the pieces will be bargained at the local level, and that's because each community is very different and has its own current sort of contract and agreement with the administration and the different units. So we will be having to bargain pieces of this with the union, but they are very much excited about making sure that this is a great experience for the students. On the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee, I have the president and the vice president in my committee of on the WEA, Mike Colson and Christine Gisam. So we feel as though everybody's in it for the right reasons and that we'll come up with something great. In terms of consistency, the commissioner did say there would be 85 to 90% of the plan that will be mandated to us. So in that sense, there's not going to be a lot of flexibility, but that remaining 10 to 15%, we don't know what that flexibility will be for us. So we know percentage wise, but in what areas that will be, we just don't know. We absolutely are in lockstep in terms of planning and collaborating with surrounding towns, myself with a group of assistant superintendents, and Bill has routine conversations with superintendents. And much of our initial plan we did together based on the guidance that was coming and the information that we had, and we'll continue to be sure that we do that. We know that there are teachers who are living outside of the district and teaching in the district, so their children are schooling in another district, and we have to be concerned about if there's too much inconsistency, how many teachers and staff members will be able to come back in our current model. So we do want to have this sort of strength in numbers and come up with a great plan, but have some consistency throughout the state, with particularly surrounding towns.
Thank you.
Chris, did you also have a question for Carrie?
Yeah, well, it was more of a comment. I think the moment passed, but I'll just throw it out. I was just going to echo and thank Carrie and Wendy Pekacik, the resources that did go out to the, I think just to the rising seniors. Really helpful to see it all in one place like that. So I thought that was really well done and very much appreciated.
Sean, did I see a hand? Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. Carrie, out of that, the 49% in the survey that you referenced from the WA students, was there a large sentiment who had concerns about that the remote lessons weren't live, or any trends that you noticed like that?
I just looked at the snapshots of some of the pieces that we coded that were similar with the buzzwords boring, frustrated for that 49%. But I haven't looked at it in depth to that level because it's so early, and I'm going to wait for more to come in. It will be open through the day tomorrow, and then tomorrow afternoon we'll close it and dive in a little bit more. So I don't have that information here tonight.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for Carrie or Bill before we jump over to Ingrid? Because I know she's got stuff to tell us. Oh, Gloria?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a quick comment on that. I mean, I know that there have been some families that have been frustrated with remote learning, and the question has been batted around quite a bit about if we are on remote learning in the fall, if families are going to decide to homeschool. And I appreciated, Bill, you making that explanation before, that homeschooling is not what's been happening this spring. This has been crisis schooling at home. And an actual homeschool plan does have a procedure and a process that needs to be followed. And also remote learning, and I appreciate, Carrie, you touching on this, remote learning can look very different. So if we are on some type of remote learning or hybrid plan in the fall, it won't necessarily be the same as what remote learning was in the spring. And as Carrie has said, there's a whole team that's looking at this and trying to decide what we can do for students in the fall based on what we've learned during this very quick turnaround crisis this spring. So I guess I just want to encourage everyone to have a little bit of patience as we're waiting for guidance from the state, and as our administrators and our teaching professionals have time to put a plan in place and to really look at what that plan is before they start making decisions about whether or not they would want to consider homeschooling their students. I think you really need to give us time to see what the plan is before you make that very important decision.
Very true. Thank you. We did have a follow-up question for Carrie. When did the student survey go out? Did you say last Friday?
I believe it was Friday afternoon.
So they've had the weekend and today and tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to pass it over to Ingrid. I know she has some updates, and then committee, we, I believe, have a resolution.
Okay, well, our favorite topic, bus transportation. So we were able to come to an agreement with the bus. Again, we're negotiating together with 11 other districts. The agreement is to pay 50% of the contracted amounts. I personally did sign a non-disclosure agreement and saw the 2019 financial statements and confirmed that is an appropriate amount. So Dee has signed the amendment, and I will be passing that up. This all just happened, so it's all new. On to Avery for school committee's approval. I did on June 5th, the governor signed another act during this emergency relative to municipal governance, and it mostly handles with town meeting and municipal finance. But the very last article is specific. It's offering a local option to approve payments on contracts for educational services, for custodial, food service, transportation. Some districts, unlike ours, contract out custodial and food services, and as well as payments to collaboratives and inter-district tuition agreements. So this, previously, that was a sticky point that we weren't allowed to pay for services not rendered. And so now this law gives us the authority to, but it's a local option that we as a community have to adopt. And it spells out how. I talked to Jody today, and she's going to spell out the process, but really my non-lawyer reading of this, for a town, it's the vote of the school committee, approval of the town accountant, and then the vote of the Board of Selectmen or the chief executive officer, depending on the charter. So what I would ask, if this is all right, that at town meeting, Jody was going to try and fast track this and provide some clarity of what we need to do exactly, but perhaps at town meeting I can, if this is the route we want to go, to adopt this local option, that you would entertain voting on that, either before or after the meeting while you're in session, because then we can take it to the select board. Jody said that they are meeting next Tuesday, and that would still get us in before the end of the fiscal year.
We will be meeting before, I believe, town meeting while we're in session. So we should be able to take that vote if we have the documents we need.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up, do we have I know you have them there because I saw them earlier. Do you have the numbers as to what our contract would have been with Dee and what we're paying and how that's shaking out?
Yes, so we would have owed, again, this is for regular transportation, $836,461. The 50% payment would be $418,230. Also, just so there's full clarity, the way we charge it is because, as we all know, we have to collect bus fees. So a portion of that month or bi-monthly payment, a portion goes to the budget and then a portion goes to the revolving fund. So the actual budget impact of the 50% payment will be $313,230, and then the revolving fund will have an impact of $105,000, leaving at the end of the year about $118,000 in the transportation revolving account. And I'm happy to send that to you so you don't have to write it.
Are there questions on the D? Yep, Megan?
So I just want to understand this agreement of the percentage goes through when again, Ingrid? Is it through? So
for this fiscal year or this school year.
Okay, so if I know we talked about that we can adjust the number of buses per our contract should ridership change if we are in the buildings for any portion of the fall. If we are not, and the state recommendation is remote learning for whatever it is, 3 months or 6 months or however, I hope not, but if that's what happens, and we are not collecting bus fees. But we also have this issue of needing a bus company to return to when eventually we return. How do we propose handling that? Because this year we decided to not refund the bus fees, so we
Right.
just have that small, it's not even a cushion because it doesn't pay for it, but we have that money in the revolving fund that we didn't refund. So can you
Right.
speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, that's, honestly, one of the topics that keeps me up. Actually, it makes me wake up in the middle of the night, because it is, the guidance right now that we're seeing, and again, everything's subject to change, is every other row, 1 kid per seat. Well, I mean, we would need 6 times as many buses if we have to bus everyone that we are currently busing. If only 50% of students go at a time, there would be an adjustment there, but that still would require more buses. I think it's a question that you as the committee will have to ultimately decide with the superintendent's recommendation of who do we bus? Can we financially even afford to bus everyone? Would we just look at our regulatory obligation, which then also would translate that we would not collect any bus fees, perhaps? Keep in mind our FY21 budget has an $800,000 offset from bus fees. So I think that it's a conversation that we're already having, waiting for more guidance, but I think, that's part of the reason I know your calendar is coming up, why, it's imperative to continue working on this all summer. When I had conversations with D-Bus, I think that's, they're ready and willing to contribute to the conversations, to work with our operations subcommittee. But also I think that's a topic that just how would we move forward so we're not in this position again next year of peddling, do we pay, how much do we pay, what are we going to do, that we are proactive and come to an agreement before school starts again of if we do have to shut down again, for example, how payment would be handled.
Ming Chen, go ahead. I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think that's where my biggest problem is. I think last time when we talk about bus fee, I made it clear is like I think just like simply giving away free money is not a solution. But here we are. Is like now we're using no bus service. We're paying from 45% and now goes up to 50%. And then next school year, if we need more buses, we're going to pay more. So so this is where I have a problem is that no matter we have less bus or more buses, we're still paying them, right? So why can't the money be used as a credit if we need more buses for next year, right? So that's my biggest problem.
I think one of the issues also there, Ming Chen, is the crossover of fiscal years, collecting monies and applying them to one particular fiscal year. May not be necessarily a good practice to applying them in the following fiscal year. But the transportation issue is one that I've already communicated with one of the members of the Commissioner's 54-person team, because it is going to be extremely complex, both from a logistical standpoint and from a financial standpoint. And there's where we're going to have to stay in touch with you as soon as we have some information in terms of what the model looks like that the Commissioner is prescribing for next year.
Yeah, I think my question, for example, we are contracting 36 buses, but now with social distancing, for example, we need 72 buses. And then suddenly school shut down. Are we going to pay like 50% of the 72 buses or 50% of the 36 buses, right? So those are the questions we need to figure out. And then even 50% of the 36 buses with no bus running, for example, for the next year, we're still paying like more than $1 million to D-Bus without any.
Well, and I think too, the idea that we can
running
just
a really big deficit.
The idea that we can just increase capacity like that is unrealistic. Most of the factories that even manufacture the buses that we need aren't open right now. There's no way D-Bus can just double our capacity. They don't have extra buses, and so that's what I mean. How the students get to and from school has to factor into the whole model.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, during the later start time discussion, we hit a ceiling with the number of buses that they had available for us at any one time, and that did have to factor into how we looked at the later start times. So I know that they do have caps. Ingrid, can you also talk to the special education transportation?
Sure.
Because I know that all intertwines here.
It does. And again, we haven't received definitive guidance, but that is one thing too. It looks like we are going to, some of our special education students will be in some sort of school environment, whether in district. Some of the collaboratives are opening up for certain students. So we will be required to transport them. Some families may choose to transport their own children, but we are legally obligated to provide transportation if that's not available, or those families can't or don't choose to. So again, with the social distancing guidelines, I mean, depending again what they've come up with definitively, it could be one student per van. I was talking to Jennifer Piper, our transportation manager today, and she indicated that for the number of students that potentially would go to the collaboratives this summer, it might be better to rent a big yellow bus for the, I think, 9 students. It's so intertwined, and this is where we really will need to rely on our bus vendor as well, because we don't have capacity with our 18 vans necessarily to handle all of it, depending how much opens up.
Any other questions for Ingrid? So with that and all of this COVID funding questions and the CARES Act, Student Opportunities Act, we've got all of this. Many of us have seen that MASC has asked every school committee to consider a resolution encouraging the legislature to cover COVID costs. And I can read it. You all should have a copy, and if we approve it, I will send it to Nina to be posted. I did put Westford's name into the template. I believe when I downloaded it today, 22 other school systems have already approved it, and there were a number on the list for this week to look at it and approve it. So it was drafted through MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And it simply says, whereas, Chris, actually, do you have it? Can you bring it up on the screen so people can see it? I will read it, but I should have asked you that
I
beforehand.
don't have our tailored version, I don't think, unless you sent that out. I was looking for.
I did. It's a PDF, but I don't know if you can put that up. And
Yeah.
whereas if schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that each school district is able to pay for the enormous additional staffing, transportation, as we were just talking about, and material expenses required to do this. And whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without also ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines. Therefore, let it be resolved that the state must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates. We must ensure a statewide school reopening that is safe, responsible, and equitable. And I have filled in, we have Jamie Eldridge, Jim Arciero, Edward Kennedy Jr. Does anyone have any comments, concerns about this resolution? Committee first, and then I'll take questions from the others. Thank you, Chris. Do I see, I didn't, oh, you guys disappeared over there.
Oh, hey Avery, this is Gloria. You can't
Thank
see me
you.
wave. You can't see me waving, but I just I want to express some appreciation that MASC is coordinating this effort. I think that absolutely we should sign on to this resolution. Everyone is very concerned about the implications of how to fund the necessary safety equipment or everything we just talked about with additional busing needs and whatnot to comply with whatever the state safety guidelines are going to be. Obviously, school districts are going to need help to do that. And the bolded line at the end, there can be no unfunded mandates for COVID-19. And I think whatever pressure school committees across the state can bring to bear through our elected officials and advocate on behalf of our students and our town and our district, we need to do that.
Thank you, Gloria. Any other committee members? Now that I know where you all are hiding over on the side. No one else? Oops. All right, seeing no other questions, do I have a motion for Westford to adopt this resolution and add our name to the list? And I will take it upon myself to send our resolution to all those named in the resolution, including our local representation.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, roll call. Alicia?
Aye.
Min Chen?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Aye, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Ingrid, I do need to circle back. One question that came in while we were doing that is the negotiations for special education for FY20. Will those follow the same guidelines that we're using to resolve the general education busing for 20 at the 50%?
That would be my recommendation. Yes.
Okay, do we need a
We
vote?
we don't have a contracts for special education.
Okay,
They are hired when we need, basically.
okay,
But for the most part, I mean, they're dedicated routes. D-Bus handles these student routes. Vanpool handles these student routes, and then our own vans and drivers handle certain routes.
so while there's no contract, there is an established set of routes that they do handle.
that they dedicate drivers and vehicles to.
And do you need us to vote on that recommendation, or is that included within the transportation recommendation?
Well, it would be good if you could do that. That's a good suggestion. I apologize, I didn't bring that to the table.
So does committee, do you understand, we've already given Ingrid the okay on the general education, but we're looking to apply the same formula to our special education for FY20. And Ingrid, do you have the
The
dollar
vast
amounts?
majority, no, because I haven't received all the invoices. They stopped
Okay.
invoicing us. So we did have a discussion. The vast majority of our outside of our own drivers, special education vendor is D-Bus.
Okay.
Vanpool does a small number of students. So, and then, there are a couple one-offs that we've used here and there throughout the year, but that I wouldn't describe as a long-term relationship where they're dedicating certain vehicles for our use solely. That is one area that we are moving towards negotiating, putting out to bid. It may not be this upcoming year, depending on what it looks like, but I think long-term it makes sense to designate a certain either in-district or out-of-district portion of our special education transportation and put it out to bid that we have a dedicated vendor. I think ultimately we might get some better rates as well.
Are there questions on the special education reimbursement?
There is no invoice, so there is no dollar amount.
Not yet. If you're more comfortable, I'm happy to provide that information before you take a vote, because I just don't have them yet.
No, understand, and that's what I was going to recommend.
Yeah, I don't say the point of voting for anything with no dollar amount.
No, I agree. But
Okay, no, that was partially was a question too. Okay, so yeah, because we still have questions. So special education FY20, what will be the savings if we only pay 50%, but we don't know right now because we don't have the invoices?
right. I mean, when
We'll
I did
say
my
50%.
projections, I did include I think a pretty good guess.
Okay,
So that was all factored in, just
okay.
as a
Gloria?
placeholder, really.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if procedurally, if what we can do is kind of the same thing that we did with the regular bus transportation, and maybe start by, officially as a committee directing Ingrid to please conduct the necessary negotiations as need be with these vendors and determine what an appropriate amount is. And then when we do have the dollar amount, then we can take the official vote at that time. But I mean, I think if we can kind of parallel that process, that makes sense.
That'd be great.
Okay. Do we get a motion for Ingrid to continue negotiating our special education transportation agreement?
So moved.
Second.
I saw your lips move. All right, roll call. It will be Chris,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
No, again, I think it should be negotiated as a credit instead of a giveaway.
Megan,
Aye.
Gloria,
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Aye, so we have 6-1 on that. So thank you, Ingrid, for
you.
negotiating all of this in good faith with the D-bus. All right, let me just check on questions. Will Ingrid be giving any more detail from a high level? Okay, so it's a question about the joint meeting that we had, and I think until we have more guidance, I'm not sure that there's much more we can address as far as where the state aid falls.
Yeah, I really think it's far too early to try and make any other projections other than what we presented at the meeting last week.
And know that the joint chairs will be meeting as we have new information. So for the time being, Andrea and I will be sitting in with the town and school to just keep an eye on that until we know more. Does anyone have a school committee update? Okay. Chris, do you know if any of our students are still on? I'm just going to try to scroll through.
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look like it. All right. So I will follow up with the last question is a school representative question. So I will follow up with the students on that one. Okay. I'm going to toss it over to Gloria for calendar, please.
But before launching into calendar, I just did want to circle back because I saw there were a couple of questions in the chat, and beauty of technology, got some messages. Apparently there are definitely some students who haven't had a chance to see the distance learning survey. I don't know if it got lost in the shuffle someplace. So I didn't know, Carrie, if it was possible to send out a blast tomorrow that was kind of a last call for student responses on that survey if it's still open tomorrow. So just in case anyone who missed it but has an opinion can weigh in.
Sure, yes. It did go out to all staff, and the staff with a blurb so that it's the same, and all staff were asked to post it to their Google Classroom. And of course, we can extend the deadline if there are some students who didn't do it, but we can absolutely send something out. I'll talk to Mr. Antonelli, and he can send something out school-wide directly.
Will it go to parents or to as well, so the parents can say, have you done this yet?
I think because we had the parent input, I just wouldn't want to confuse anybody to think that it would be for them as well. So I think sending it to students would be most appropriate at this point.
Okay.
But they should look forward to Google Classroom. Great. Thank you, Carrie, for clarifying. Okay, policy. Before I always forget this part, can I have a motion to waive the reading of the policy? That's obviously in everybody's packet, but we want to waive the reading.
So moved. Second.
There we go. All right. And it's a roll call. So we'll do Alicia, who I believe seconded that.
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Gloria,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous. Thank you, Gloria. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this is in your packet. Just to clarify for anyone who might be looking at it in the packet, the red text was the original proposed amendments to the policy, and then we put the policy out for public comment. We did receive several public comments, and the policy committee reviewed all of those comments, and in response to those comments, we do have some additional recommendations. Thank you, Chris. And those additional recommendations are in blue. So those are the new changes, and I'll just briefly detail that those were in response to some public comments. One of the comments was pleased to see the inclusivity of the policy, that it did discuss including religious holidays on our calendar, which we always do, and but was concerned that, especially this year, because there were so many difficulties, that the calendar did come out so late. To clarify for anyone who may have missed it at our last meeting, the calendar is out now, and next year's school calendar is available on the district website. But this parent was asking if we could put a date certain for when the calendar must be released. This policy subcommittee was a bit concerned about setting a date certain for committing all future committees to when a calendar must be released. You never know what potential complications could occur in a future year, like did this year. One year we had the League of Women Voters reach out to ask us to change our policy on having school on election days. So sometimes there are things that do unfortunately delay the release of the calendar. But we did want to clarify that a draft of the calendar should be prepared by the superintendent and publicly presented to the school committee. We thought the term submitted might be vague, and people might not realize that submitted to the committee does mean publicly presented at a meeting. It might still be in draft form. It might still be being worked on if there's still a concern or an issue, but that it should be at least in draft form, publicly presented, and hopefully voted on soon thereafter. The next public comment noted that in our revision of the policy, we removed the list of holidays from the policy itself, and we removed the reference to I believe it was called the district or town cultural committee. The reason why we removed those references is often the dates for these holidays change. So we didn't want to presume that, for example, Rosh Hashanah was always in October. Sometimes it's in September. So what we did, instead of having a set list in the policy, is we added the language that, for reference, a list of major cultural holidays and observances shall be listed on the school calendar. And of course, we did not intend to imply that list would not be reviewed on an annual basis with the appropriate resources. But we realized that language might have been a bit vague. So we've tried to clarify that by saying that the calendar committee will review that list in consultation with school and community religious and cultural resources. In the past, that might have been the cultural committee. More recently, that would have been the diversity and inclusion team. We didn't necessarily want to name the diversity and inclusion team as the consultation, because that team might evolve. It might be a new name. And since we don't like to have to go back to rewrite policy every time something like that changes, we wanted to leave it more generally. But our intent, and hopefully this revision clarifies, is that absolutely that list of religious holidays and cultural observances should be reviewed every year by appropriate resources such as the diversity inclusion team to make sure that we do have an accurate and appropriate list from year to year. The third public comment we received asked if there could be parent representation on this committee. And I think we had a similar conversation to the one that was had earlier about the reopening committee. Sometimes having one parent on a committee only would provide one parent's perspective instead of a broader perspective from many parents. So we did decide to add some language because obviously calendars have big impacts on parents and families. So we did add the sentence that if the advisory calendar committee intends to propose any substantial changes to the previous school year calendar, every effort should be made to solicit input from parents through appropriate survey methods and/or consultation with school advisory councils. Depending on what the change is, a survey might be appropriate, or certainly since school advisory councils are already in place, and that is a resource that this committee could use to solicit input if they were considering changing, say, parent-teacher conferences at the elementary level, they could reach out to those particular SACs, or they could survey those particular parents. So we thought that was an appropriate way to make sure we were getting parent input on the calendar when it was necessary, without creating extra layers of complications of figuring out how to pick parents from what levels and trying to have a spread and further complicating the committee. So I do think this is an improvement to our calendar process, and I think it will help in future years, and would ask the committee to adopt it as amended with these updated changes.
Thank you, Gloria, and to the policy committee. I love the changes. I think that some of those clarifications are right, spot on. Sean, I saw a hand up.
Yeah, Gloria. So forgive me if you already addressed this in a previous meeting, but and I know that calendar is kind of central offices and our purview, but we have the support of the WEA on this, or what's your feeling on that?
I think that having this advisory committee really does open up the early formulation of the calendar. As we found with a lot of things, once something is in draft form, it's sometimes harder to change and move, and that this brings some of our building principals and some of our teachers into the process earlier, and the teacher representatives would be selected from various grade levels, so by the WEA. So I think this really does open up the process earlier, so that some of that input can be conveyed earlier in the process.
Great, thanks.
Other questions from the committee before we take a vote on this policy? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve policy as revised and presented this evening?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so roll call vote. Alicia?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Okay, aye. So we have unanimous approval of the new calendar policy. And I apologize, it was number what?
Ooh,
Oh,
P
no, it's okay.
P5
114.
1114.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you all. And next is going to be Ingrid and Bill are going to tell us about some changes in the business office.
Well, may I just say that Ingrid and I have met several times over the last 5 or 6 months. She has indicated that she would like to see some additional efficiencies in the office, some cross-training in the office between jobs, some rearrangement of responsibilities, tasks of various people based on skill sets. And so what I did mention to her is do an analysis of what you need. Let's meet and we'll take it to the school committee. And that's where we are tonight. She has done an excellent job in understanding what the functions are that we need to conduct on a daily basis in the business office of the school system, and has tailored some job descriptions, some job tasks, and some job titles to her plan. And I wholeheartedly support it, and I hope you will also. So, Ingrid?
Sure. So I'm going to reference the one-page summary that was provided in your packet of the proposal. Oh, great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
So currently, the business office for the support staff has an administrative assistant, an accounts payable specialist, which is open right now, and then 1.75 payroll specialists. As I've not even been in this job for a year, it's been a long year. I just feel like there were some areas that we were maybe a little vulnerable in, areas that were bottlenecking too much with one person, sometimes me. And my proposed restructuring still maintains the absolute critical functions of payroll and accounts payable, which is paying our bills, but also providing support, more support on the budget for budget analysis, tracking, all this we do, but just it's spreading it out a little more among various staff members. And then one new piece that I really feel strongly about, because when I was assistant director of school finance, I worked quite a bit in this, was the student activity piece and just the outgoing piece of supporting the schools with finance. As we know, there's a lot of money that runs through our schools through collection of field trips to program fees. And I really feel that that's an area that could use some standardization, training for the financial admins in the schools and actual support. So that's one thing that I think we've learned with our remote work is how to use, like Zoom for training purposes, communication, and sharing screens to provide training and support when we're not actually physically sitting next to the person who needs that help. So definitely for the school program and accounts associate, that will be the liaison with the schools with a laptop, will travel, and particularly at the high school level to assist there with going through the hundreds of thousands of dollars that flow through the WA student activity account. I really hope that this will also provide much more transparency and information. To back up payroll, we'll still continue to have one full-time payroll person, and then with some of the better utilization of our accounting software Munis, I think we can make do with a split position of accounts payable and payroll. I'm suggesting a 60-40 split. I think, we'll kind of see how that actually pans out. I think like so much in our offices, there are cyclical times where payroll's busier than AP. Of course, we probably won't have any money, so we might not have any bills. But we're also trying to push downward some of the requisition processes using, like I said, using Munis that'll originate in the school that should free up some of the accounts payable work in my office. And then the other position full-time position would be the operations and budget associate, which again would work very closely with me on budget tracking and the various other special funds and grants that we track and manage. But again, hoping to provide more information to you and the community as well. And it's budget neutral.
Thank you, Ingrid, for the overview. I commend you taking a look at the efficiencies, and it looks like tightening things up with 2 open positions. It's a good time to do that. Committee, do you have any questions or concerns for Ingrid on the restructure? I see did Ming-Chen, okay, you did. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to actually thank Ingrid for actually taking this opportunity to actually look into how to streamline our process, how to actually serve the school system and then every single like school site better. I think it's a great idea to actually to have someone to work with individual schools on the activity accounts, and then also by utilizing efficiency and then using software to actually to focus our to less focus on the payroll stuff, but also to more look into the other accounts. I think that's a great move.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Oh, Gloria, you have a question? Go ahead.
As someone who had to help with the redrafting of the student activities account policy, and Ingrid spent many meetings trying to explain it to me and how incredibly complicated it is. Absolutely. Thank you for taking this opportunity to providing some more oversight in that area as well. I think that'll really, really help all the individual school buildings.
Avery, may I just say also that we're going to work very carefully with the Human Resource Department also, so that one of the main objectives here also is to improve the linkage between HR and the payroll function, and also a much higher level of efficiency of utilizing Munis, the Munis software program that we have been seeking to do for some time. And, you know, Ingrid is a very important impetus behind that right now.
Great. Well, thank you again. And the committee, do I have a motion to approve the new structure and job descriptions for the business office?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Sean?
Aye.
Ming-Chen?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Aye. So you're unanimous. Thank you again, Ingrid, for taking that time to look at that.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, we have our meeting schedule. It was in the packet. I believe Nina and Ingrid worked so that it lines up with the warrants for the coming year. You will notice that we have tonight, and then we are going to take a couple weeks, hopefully give the state time to come out with things, give the reopening committee time to come out with some ideas, and then we're going to start back in July. Usually we don't come back until August 17th, I think would have been our first meeting back. So we're adding 3 meetings to our regularly scheduled meetings, given the current state of affairs. I know that we have a couple Tuesdays based on holidays. Are there any other concerns, comments on our calendar? Thank you, Chris, for putting it up. I'm trying to see if nobody's raising their hand. Okay. So seeing no questions, can I have a motion to approve our 20/21 school committee meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Megan?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Ming-Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aye. So we have a schedule that will coincide with our warrants, and I believe that Ingrid and I have already talked. There may be a few one-off warrants here at the end of this month and the beginning of next, which Chris and I can handle signing based on our previous vote. Officer elections. As many of you know, we would be taking our officer elections, but I am going to ask the committee to consider suspending policy 7107, which is our policy on elections and officers. And this is being done to allow for the town election to occur before we vote to bring in a new slate of officers. Are there comments, concerns about that from committee and or public? So by suspending, oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to make the motion.
By suspending this, we need a 2/3 vote to suspend the policy, and we would basically take what would have happened tonight for a election, and it would be moved to the next possible meeting, which would be our July 13th meeting that we just approved. So I know Chris raised his hand. You making a motion still, Chris?
Sure.
Okay.
And just so people know,
Yep.
the policy, it's policy P7307 is our suspension of policies. And so if people are curious about that, that's the one that lets us do this with a 2/3 majority vote. But I would move that we suspend policy P7107 organizational meeting, and that we postpone the officer elections until after the election to our first meeting in July.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, and we need 2/3. So we have Megan,
Aye.
Gloria,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Min Chen,
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Okay, aye. So we have unanimous. Thank you. We will take elections up at our next meeting. And I'm going to ask Chris and Alicia and Bill to give us an update on the diversity and inclusion. We had a positive outcome last week.
I don't know. I mean, I'll start first. Just a thank you to the many, many voices that we've heard from in the community around concerns that we're all having about the treatment of communities of color, treatments of individuals all over, including in our schools and in our community, and what we as a community can do to proactively ensure that people are treated fairly and in a welcoming way. And so this aligns with our diversity and inclusion team, and we've received countless emails and messages about this, and it's heartening, and it's great to hear from everybody. And a lot of it's been student run and young alumni run. So it's a lot of young people who are taking the initiative and wanting to be leaders here. So I'll just briefly mention that, and I want to let everyone else have a chance to talk too. But we did meet with 3 of those young leaders who are recent alums of Westford Academy. We had a meeting, I think it was Friday morning, with them, and I thought it was really productive and really helpful. And one thing I'll point out is they've reached out with what they're calling WPS 8 Can't Wait. And this is a set of demands, of measures that they want to see in Westford Public Schools. And this echoes the 8 Can't Wait initiative. That's a movement to bring 8 key changes to policing policies nationwide. So that addresses policing. This addresses what we can do in our schools. And so I'm just going to actually quickly go down these, because I think it's a start of a conversation, and these do a really nice job of hitting on a lot of the things that you would want to pay attention to. And I think they are a little bit of a stake in the sand that lets us measure how are we doing? Are we doing these things? And are these things that we should be doing? And so I hope and expect that this is the start of us looking at Westford Public Schools and seeing what we're doing well and seeing where there's still room for growth and improvement. So I want to quickly read through these just so people hear them. This also got added to the packet. We had a statement by one of those young alums, Meda Palnati, and that's in the packet. And after I'm done reading this, I'm going to put a link to this also in the chat. But just quickly, the WPS 8 can't wait. Number one is reinstituting a student-led and faculty-supported diversity day. Number two is establishing a new public diversity and inclusion committee made up of students and faculty that will address racist incidents that occur within Westford Public Schools, into which students can voice their concerns regarding racial incidents that they witness. Number three, adding diversity, compassion, and anti-racism to the core curriculum of our district as a required course or equivalent. Number four, the inclusion of diverse authors in at least 35% of syllabi in humanities classes such as history, literature, government, and the social sciences. Number five, increased diversity of teaching staff, administration, and disciplinary figures. Number six, required diversity and implicit bias training each year for all members of the teaching staff, administration, and other authority figures. Number seven, holding students, faculty, and staff who say or do discriminatory or offensive things accountable for their actions, and transparency about hate speech policies and consequences. And number eight, an annual public report presented to the school committee and the public detailing, to the school committee and the public, detailing the number of racial incidents or complaints, whether the complaints involve students, staff, administration, information on how those incidents, complaints are handled, and improvements being made to prevent similar incidents in the future. So that's the WPS 8 can't wait. And again, I hope these are things that we're going to continue discussing going forward.
Bill, do you want to comment on those 8? And someone's asking if we were going to publicly make a comment on the 8 specifics and also the status of the diversity and inclusion team.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank everyone for participating in that meeting. Chris did an excellent job facilitating it, and Alicia participated, Jim Antonelli, Jenny Kravitz, along with Robin Miller, Meda Polnati, and Prachi, former graduates of Westford Academy. And it was very rich conversation. It was very deep conversation. These are students, and all of the students who have been emailing us are extraordinarily committed to the issue of social justice, not only in Westford, but in the state, the country, and around the world. And we've had an excellent diversity and inclusion team for 3 years now. It had an off year this past year, as you know. We are rekindling it. We have some ideas for having someone facilitate the meetings. We spent a lot of time initially with this committee. We originally named it the Cultural Awareness Committee. And it didn't take us very long to understand that this committee is much more than talking about International Foods Night and International Dress Day. That is really nothing when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'd like to take just 1 second to read the mission statement of our diversity and inclusion team. It says, in the Westford Public Schools, we strive to develop an inclusive and equitable school community where every individual is welcomed, respected, valued, and supported. We strive to reflect and value the faces, voices, and experiences of our diverse community in our curriculum, school activities, and celebrations. We recognize that all members of our community bear responsibility for this important work. The Diversity and Inclusion Team serves as a resource and catalyst in order to promote the value of diversity within our school system, which encourages mutual respect and mutual perspectives. Diversity includes, but is not limited to, socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, language, nationality, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, religion, spiritual beliefs, and values. geography, cognitive and physical abilities, and age. So we spent a lot of time. We spent several meetings over a year period of putting together the mission statement. And as I said, Alicia has been very much involved in the committee work. We've had students who have been peer leaders, who have been trained by the Anti-Defamation League and the World of Difference program, who have actually started to work with our elementary students in terms of the importance of social justice and respect. We don't use the word tolerance, because tolerance, when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, to me means you're willing to put up with something. And that's not what this is about. This is all about respect, okay, understanding and appreciating the diverse cultures that we have, not only in Westford, but in the state, the region, the country, and throughout the world. And so, Chris, I don't know if you have that list of activities that the diversity and inclusion team has been involved with, and if you don't, I can post it on our school website. But these are the types of things over the last 3 years, and I once again have to say that it was an relatively inactive year this year. But one of the major goals for this upcoming school year is to rejuvenate, regenerate, rekindle the diversity and inclusion team with a core membership, excellent core membership. We'll add some people also, not only from the school system, but the community. We'd like some of the community members to perhaps run some of our meetings and facilitate some of our meetings. Jenny Kravitz was the firecracker facilitator who kept us moving along and provided lots of readings, lots of topics for discussion. And we want to make sure that, we consult with Jenny also, but we are absolutely committed to a depth of discussion and action towards a greater appreciation and working towards a greater level of social justice and equity, diversity, and inclusion in our school system. All levels, all personnel. I know that we have all the administrative team participated in a full one-day session with the Anti-Defamation League on the World of Difference program on implicit bias, and our eyes were extraordinarily opened at that point in time. And so I'll stop talking now if Alicia or anyone else wants to mention something, but I do want to mention that in a program review, I call it a program review, I've known that term for many years from the Department of Education. A couple of years ago, they did make mention and commendation of the fact that we were one of the few school systems in the state that really had a quality diversity and inclusion team. And I think we're going to kind of change the name a little bit to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team for this upcoming school year. And we'll start right from the beginning of the year and go great guns throughout the year.
So Bill, there were some questions that had come up. Does anyone want to publicly comment on any of the 8? I think we've talked about some of them. I don't know if there's any specifics we want to comment on, but there are 2 questions, relatively the same question is, have we dedicated and will we dedicate any financial resources, monetary, to the efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yes, we have a system-wide materials and supplies budget, whether that's for readings or whether that's for materials for students in the classroom dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're committed to, that's part of our mission, is to acquire those materials, to present them to students in a responsible manner, as well as teaching mathematics, English language arts, social studies, and science. One of the things that we will begin to look at is how bias enters into curriculum materials, textbooks, discussions in classrooms, whether a teacher is aware of it or not. I was enlightened to that when I attended a meeting of about 12 students about a year and a half ago at Westford Academy with some of the guidance counselors. And we met for about 2 hours after school to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bias. And for the very first time, I heard from students that on occasion, they do feel uncomfortable about certain conversations that take place that are curriculum driven in the school system. And as I said, that was the first time that I had heard that. And we will begin to look at library texts in that lens, and also our materials that we're presenting on a daily and weekly and yearly basis in the school system. It will take some time, but we have to start, and we have to start now.
Carrie, I see Sean's hand. Carrie, do you have anything you want to add as far as curriculum change or re-evals, that sort of thing?
Sure. Over the past couple of years, we have been looking at our text, particularly at the 6 through 12 level. That's when you're reading more whole group text, and starting to make sure that the texts that we choose are engaging for students, but B, also ensuring that they represent diversity on many different levels. So there have been some changes and swaps that have been made looking through that lens, and we will continue to do that. There will definitely be a more concerted effort to do that. In terms of while this topic isn't just isolated in a silo of one content area, but when we're talking about the new social studies standards, much of that is really based on the pillars of the social justice standards that are from Teaching Tolerance, and that is identity, diversity, justice, and action. And to the point where we had, I don't know that it's on that list, but we did have the ADL also come in March to provide professional development for all of the elementary levels, because even starting at that level, the content is much heavier, and teachers needed and will continue to need support in having these conversations, providing information in a balanced way, and giving students the tools to create their own type of thinking, all while teaching inclusivity, equity, respect, and all of those other pieces that mesh with it. So we are actually on the cusp of a rather aggressive approach in bringing more of that information into our classrooms just by way of the new social studies standards. So we've been very sensitive to that. We have purchased materials, and again, have begun to provide teachers with support. We have not shifted fully to the new social studies standards at 6 through 12, and we're about 2/3 of the way there at the elementary this year, even though the year was cut short. So we are on the very sort of beginning cusp of moving forward in that direction. But despite sort of the political landscape right now, this has been something that has been on the horizon and is really now right before us regardless.
Okay. So we have a couple questions. People are asking, will the staff teachers be given more opportunities to train with ADL or other similar organizations? And, how are they being trained? Do they also get anti-bias training? So not only the diversity, inclusion, but the anti-bias.
That's very much part of the World of Difference program. The only factor that may inhibit us at the beginning of the school year is the model of teaching and learning right now. And are the staff back in the buildings? Are they not in the buildings? But we'll try to adapt. We may have, if we have to, instead of in-person professional development, which we have basically conducted in the past, we'll ask the ADL to conduct some remote sessions with our staff.
And teachers who, one question, sorry, I see your hand, Megan. How are teachers who do or say racist things held accountable?
Well, there is a formal process that we have. We are bound by law to conduct a very thorough civil rights investigation in any instance of student against a student against the staff member against the student. This year I conducted it was almost a 3-week investigation, interviewing about 12 people on a harassment claim between 2 staff members. And that involved, you have to ask very specific questions, carefully constructed, not to lead the interviewees in responses. And so we take it very seriously because all of those reports have to be kept on file.
Megan, I'm gonna let you ask your question before I jump back to public questions.
It's sort of more of a comment, and I just wanted to say, I think I had reached out to all of you, and I know I had said the same to you, Bill, but I think that, you know, in addition to having the diversity, equity, inclusion team meet regularly next year, which I think is so important, and I think communicating to the public what comes out of those meetings is so important. I think another way to sort of really make this be a part of our mission going forward. I think I had said to all of you, you know, this is a systemic issue, and so it requires systemic change and all stakeholders. And one way I think with the new school year starting, also to ensure that that happens and the reporting of that happens and that the ideas are generated and that it's system wide, is to perhaps weave it into school improvement plan items, action items at each school level. I know eventually, obviously, we need a strategic plan, but Bill, your annual goal development and things related to that, and that not only ensures that it's happening system-wide, but makes it more transparent to the public in reporting what is actually being done, whether it's, Carrie, as you mentioned, at the curriculum level. You know, we do have some action items on that list that reference a lot of student training. I think we've had conversations in the past about hiring practices and hoping to diversify our staff in that way. So I think there's just a lot of areas and opportunities to weave this into sort of the fabric of our school system. And I hope that that is thought about at sort of every opportunity going forward.
Well, it's interesting you just used that last expression, because what I always like to say is these are very important. Talking about these issues and dealing with these issues are very important threads in the tapestry of what we know as the Westford Public Schools. And this is not a 2-week on, 5-week off, or 1 year, and then we don't do anything for the next 3 years. This has to be every day and every year in what we do and how we do it, with a very carefully constructed professional development program for our staff and for our students and for the community, for that fact.
Go ahead, Sean, and then I'm going to jump back to questions.
Okay, great. So first of all, kudos to the Westford new alums, Westford Academy new alums who came up with this. I mean, it's beautiful. They're really well thought out, concise, and I think just brilliant. But anyways, my question is probably, Carrie, you're the one to answer this. My question is a logistics question. Number 3 has a question about core curriculum in the demand. I mean, we don't even set the core curriculum, right? I mean, that's set by the state. So this idea of setting it's not that we couldn't work it in, it just wouldn't be under the core curriculum requirement. Is that accurate, or?
The state sets what we have to teach, but what we use to teach to get there is certainly something that we do decide. So in terms of the curriculum that we choose to bring in here in Westford, we do have the ability to either choose or send away or change things that we are using to teach those standards. When I am adopting a new curriculum, there's a team of people, and then there's an entire rubric of the things that we're looking for. And on it, there's a specific section that is around diversity and making sure that some of those pieces or all of those pieces are woven into the curriculum so that we can try to minimize or eliminate any sort of biases that are obviously not intended, but we do want to look through the curricula through that lens when we're vetting. So we do that. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll certainly do some kind of looking back and combing through now that this has come to light even more so. It is absolutely more on the forefront.
Perfect. And one more, Avery, I'll be quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bill, regarding number 8, I'm kind of imagining number 8 as being more like, I'm thinking of like Mrs. Mitchell's presentation, that she does where she speaks of how many visits, they've had at the nursing office. That number 8 has got to be a priority, from the get-go. I think that would just be tremendously eye-opening for the town, particularly because we all kind of live in our own bubbles and we go to our own schools and you don't see outside of that realm, right? I mean, my kids are mostly at Millennium and they'll be at NAB next year, but it's like you don't think outside of that. So I think that this would be really helpful, number 8, if we put a quick emphasis on that early, right?
Absolutely.
Hold on a second, Gloria. I see your hand. I just wanted to take a couple of the questions off. As far as the DEI team, can you speak? Are there students on that team, Bill?
Yes. We've had students occasionally. It's been mostly staff and members of the community, but we are going to have students on that team also, whether they are current students or graduates of our school system.
Okay. And do you have, why had the diversity and inclusion team had such an inactive year?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. You and I have talked about that. I will take responsibility certainly for the lack of meetings, but there are a couple of different things that I would prefer not to discuss in public and that we've talked about. Yeah.
I'm just sorry, I'm reading through the questions as fast as I can. They are coming in quite quickly. There are 2 or 3 questions that ask about the diversity. Will there be a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion to coordinate this, and how many other districts have that position? And I know that we've talked about it as not necessarily the first step.
There are some communities that have a director of what they call it, diversity and inclusion, or a similar title. What we've talked about is beginning to work with what we have right now, and then seeing how that evolves, and if the work requires a full-time person involved, which I do think ultimately will be the case. Perhaps not in fiscal 21, but maybe 22, 23, or 24 beyond may very well be the case. The important thing is piecing it together with different individuals can work, but people can only devote so much time to it and so much focus. And so I think eventually that type of position will be very helpful, not only to the school system, but to the town in general.
All right, Gloria, did you had a question? I'm going to try to read over the next set of questions.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's so much here, and I guess what I know the question's been asked, if we're willing to commit to a specific response to these 8 items, and there's so much here that I think what we maybe can and should commit to is to providing that response at some point. But it's a lot to try and figure out how to provide that response tonight. But I think what we absolutely can do is have this be the start of a conversation. One of the things Medha Palnati says in the statement that's now in the packet is it costs $0 to start a conversation. And I think that's what we're doing here tonight. And I think we need to acknowledge this is the start of a conversation. Sean and I had an excellent conversation last week about what kind of format we could create to facilitate this conversation, whether it's some type of town hall or listening forum. And I think we need to continue the conversations that have started between Chris and Alicia and Bill and our young alums, some of whom it's become apparent that I know and it might be related to. And I think we need to figure out what kind of listening forum will help us understand more their concerns so that we can provide a better response to those 8. But I think we should really look at how we can try to make that happen this summer. I think we need to seize the moment of not just the moment in the country and locally with all of the energy around this topic, but also seize the moment while our young alums are home. They do have a unique perspective, not only being able to reflect back on their experience as students, but also in terms of how we are preparing our current students for going off into college and realms that may be more diverse than Westford is, whether it be in terms of race or religion or socioeconomic status, background. So I think having that type of listening forum sometime this summer, perhaps like late July, is a goal we should move towards.
Mhm. Yes, I'd like to see it come sooner than later. Ming Chen?
I got disconnected, so I don't know what I missed. But anyway, I want to actually talk about two things. One thing is that in our school system, we have like 30% of students that people of color from, and then most of them are from first generation immigrant families. One of the things I think is really lacking in our curriculum is that we're not actually reconnecting them back to their cultural or heritage in the history class, in the social class. We need to do better on that front. The other thing in our curriculum, I think, is like in the reading list or in the textbooks which we select for our kids, I absolutely respect the academic freedom. I think that's crucial. But on the other hand, is that when we touch those topics, we have to make sure that we have the correct lens, because sometimes when we pick some topic, some of topic may be very controversial, maybe like very offensive to certain region or certain area of people. We need to actually have an open conversation to make sure that when we use those textbooks, we set the correct context, the historical context, the cultural context, the social context correctly, so that when the students read from the book, they got a whole picture instead of from the author's narrative, because sometimes the author's narrative just tells one side of story, it doesn't tell like the whole side of story. And then I totally get it that for the teachers, they don't have this kind of historical context. It's very hard for them to understand the feeling from people from other countries. But I think we do need to actually to be more diligent in that front.
That's a good point, Ming Chen, because so what I heard in the meeting with the students back about a year and a half ago was sometimes it was not necessarily the content, may have been, but sometimes not the content, but it was the direction of the conversation, whether it was student-led or sometimes teacher-led, and sometimes unintentional in terms of sort of leading a discussion that resulted in some type of bias being expressed. And so it's both content, the perspective, and certainly the follow-up conversation in the classroom that we need to continue to talk about with all staff. We need to continue to talk about that amongst ourselves in terms of making sure that in our own job and responsibilities that we're very much aware of what is I don't want to say reasonable, but what is appropriate in terms of the nature of a conversation with someone, and how do we conduct a conversation that maximizes the respect, the true respect that we have for another individual. So you bring up some good points in that last statement.
And I think that one of the most important pieces to all of that is whatever the content may be, is for every child to explore it through multiple perspectives. And that's something, whether it's specific to diversity or inclusion or not, I mean, it's how you teach empathy. And we want to be sure that we're not just teaching one way, like the good old fashioned way that Many of us were taught in school that Christopher Columbus was the first European here. And, before the internet, if somebody told us that, so whether it was true or false didn't really matter. As long as we were kind of all believing the same assumptions, then that was okay. Well, the world is so connected now. We have all opened our eyes to so much more that is certainly not good enough and cannot be tolerated. And not only the new social studies standards, but how we have chosen to implement those, because those are dictated to us, and it certainly embraces everything that we're talking about. But we are creating IDMs, and those are kind of units that are, it stands for Inquiry Design Model, and that is to get students to be inquisitive, to be curious, and to gather facts with the teacher facilitating so that they come up with their own opinion. And so the end result, has to be some form of an argument, and there are several different argument stems because there are several different answers, and those teachers have access to what those argument stems are, but they could be something that the students create that the teacher hadn't even thought of yet. And from their perspective, as long as they can back it up with evidence. So exactly what you're talking about is what we are starting to do, because I completely agree with you, and understanding each other's perspective, and understanding that we don't have to sway each other to think our way, or I don't have to change my mind, but just being able to respectfully articulate where each other is coming from and respect that there are those differences. So we have a lot of work to do, but I couldn't agree more.
Alicia, and then I've got to get back to questions again.
Sure. So Ming-Chen, what you just described actually did come up in the conversation with the students. We did talk about sources that have the authority to speak from certain perspectives and sources that have authenticity behind them. We also talked about, personally, I shared that the policy subcommittee has been looking at all of our policies all along, but that one of my focuses in light of the students bringing concerns to us would be, as we do our over the summer tinkering with what we need to do for the next year, that I would be looking at the policies to make sure that we flag anything that needs to be updated. I think the most important thing here is what everyone has said, is this is a conversation. In the meetings that we've had with parents, we've said things like, we're not going to solve this tonight. We're not here to find the one thing that we can do and just go, we're done. Everything's fixed. Everyone smile now. My favorite MASC phrase is, you can't make smile and file decisions. We're not just going to say that we've done something. We need to authentically move forward. We need to listen, and we need to put things into action that will actually have an impact. So as much as I feel the impulse to let's do something right away, I think we need to be extremely thoughtful in the choices we make and create a path that is not only sustainable, but actually addresses what our students and our community are telling us they need.
Okay, so I think that's a perfect segue into some of the questions. I see people are, I think I'm sensing people are frustrated and a little angry with some of what they're seeing currently. That it's not enough what we're doing. We need to do more and invest more. There are a couple questions about could we commit to a panel discussion of minority students and young alums to share their experiences and have a minority moderator. I guess Acton just did something like that. And they were asking if we would commit and pledge to doing something similar.
Avery, can I talk to that?
Absolutely.
So I think that's a great idea. I think there's been a lot of conversations about doing just that. When we met with the students on Friday, that came up. So I would say, I personally, speaking as myself, would say I want us to commit as a school system to do that. I think doing something this summer, doing it soon, is important. I think doing it while we have a lot of alums home from college is a great idea. I think having a moderator who is a person of color is a great idea as well. And I'll do everything I can to make sure that that can happen. And just, I guess I share the frustration. There's a lot of talk, and we're like, well, we have to figure out, you know, concrete things we do. I'm just gonna be honest. These 8 things I think are very concrete. And so, you know, I don't necessarily want to sign us up for something that hasn't, you know, incorporated all the voices that we want incorporated. So I hear that. But this is a really good starting place. And I really want us to look at these. And I'm personally using these as my, like I said, these are my guideposts for how we do things. And I think there's power in using the 8 can't wait, because it's something people know from another, you know, from policing. It's discrete, it's concrete. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't see a lot, I don't see a problem with any of these. Now I know there are some do have a cost associated there, you know, when it comes to training and things like that. So we'll have to see how we do that. But as a committee, or, you know, certainly as a member of this committee, I can commit, at least in, you know, in notionally, to supporting all of these, because I think we have to start taking concrete steps. We can't just feel good that we feel like we do the right things. I think, because these are very specific things that we don't do, right? Almost all of these 8 we don't do, and they make a lot of sense.
And as I said, the 8 can't wait to me was a first conversation, not an only conversation. It was the very tip of how we were going to start. It was just sort of a way to open the door, and now we've got to open it all the way and hear all the concerns and really hear from all sides of things. We have questions about how there's been 2 requests to discuss the SRO at an upcoming agenda, and that the SRO in schools could be harmful. I think that's sort of a separate topic that I don't want to lose, because I know we have had those discussions, but when it comes to diversity, is that something that we can sort of add to our list of things to explore? How will the committee bring expertise and experience to this conversation? I mean, I think, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that we can, you know, we could call and speak with the Anti-Defamation League. We can speak with the NAACP. We can speak with a number of organizations that deal with social justice issues every single day. And so, you know, I'll certainly work with you to put together this forum for the summer, and we can put together a list of resources and organizations that we want to have as part of this.
But again, I think we need to engage. There's another young alum who's
Oh, absolutely.
Who would like to participate and is asking, why are these 8 basic demands too much to ask for an immediate answer? I think that these 8 are absolutely got to be the first things that we attack.
And they're not too much to ask. Some can be done faster than others. You know, some are more systemic change in terms of our organization, but some can be done relatively quickly. And so please don't misread anything that any of us are saying as, you know, we can't do these, or we're not, or reluctant to do them. We're absolutely committed to doing them.
Interesting question on curriculum. Just because Westford doesn't set the curriculum doesn't mean they can't actively teach anti-racism in the classroom. Isn't it up to the individual educator how they interpret it?
Well, we can select the curriculum, and we do, and we certainly bring that to the forefront when we're vetting the curriculum. But while yes, the curriculum certainly has an impact, I do believe much of that work is sort of the day-to-day interactions, and because the conversations hopefully take on a life of their own in each classroom, even if it's stemmed from the same curriculum. And one group of students would have a different take than another group of students with a different teacher. So I think the key to this is the professional development of teachers on how to support them when these conversations occur. I think the curriculum is something that we will certainly look at and is one piece of it, but I think the true work is even deeper than that, and that is just giving the teachers the tools to be able to facilitate effectively and properly so that these conversations can grow organically and benefit all of the students involved.
Okay. Sean?
Oh, sorry.
I saw a hand, sorry.
Oh, on a related concept to what Carrie just said, I did speak to a resident, Dan Goldner, great guy, who's a teacher at Acton Boxborough, and something that he encouraged us to look into, and he's actually an instructor in this, was the SEED program, which is related to the Anti-Defamation League, but I think it's geared more towards teachers. I'll leave it at that I did have the conversation with him, and I'll follow up with Alicia and with Jenny Kravitz about my discussion with him. But it was really fruitful, and I did speak to Avery briefly about it, but really interesting. And I know he wanted to suggest that he would volunteer some time, and kind of go over the program with us if there's any interest in that.
All right.
That would be great.
Avery,
Yes.
while you're reading through some of those questions, I just wanted to say one quick thing that I'm seeing in a lot of questions without, you can read the detail when you go through them, but a lot of references of alums that are dating back, 5-10 years. And that also happened at the Black Lives Matter rally. I think it was so powerful for people there to hear experiences of our students of color dating back, 10, 12 years and giving real horrifying stories of their first encounters with racism in Westford. And I think that, that speaks to, yes, this 8 Can't Wait is happening now. Yes, the emails and the support, but this has been going on a long time. Yes. And recognizing that it has been going on a long time and hearing those stories from students who have experienced it feels like a very important step in this process as well, because I think that there is a tendency for some to think that doesn't happen here, or, oh, we're teaching the students acceptance, we're doing this ADL, we're doing these steps, and so it doesn't happen here. Of course it happens here. It happens everywhere. And hearing these stories makes it very real, hearing from our students and our alumni. So I just want to point that out. I think that is so important. Those voices need to be heard, and those stories need to be heard by everyone.
And thank you. That's a great summer. We are seeing a lot of this. Why are we talking about this like it's the first time? And I think I didn't mean that it's the first time. I meant in this current push with the 8 Can't Wait, it was a first step. And so I'm thank Megan very much for acknowledging that these have been happening, that there are students, there are staff who are extremely frustrated that this has been going on sort of silently, and that we need to act now. And so I think I don't want to speak out of turn in these questions. I heard Chris say he will commit, and I'm hoping that the committee and the superintendent and the leadership and everybody will commit to making this a priority, and keep this conversation open and going with students, with staff, with young alum, because I think the young alum bring a whole lot. They were here when it was happening. They've now transitioned to colleges and are seeing different perspectives that can be shared with all of us. So I think that's all so important. And so somebody is asking, will the rest of the school committee commit to supporting these 8 and to keep this conversation open? And I think that everyone will. Chris, I see your hand.
Yeah, that's what I was going to actually say. I mean, given that you're right, this is not necessarily the exhaustive list of everything you would want us to do. Understanding that, I would like to move that the committee supports the 8 can't wait measures. And that
I
we'll,
will second.
and that we'll work with the administration to understand what steps can and will be taken to implement them.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I second that.
Okay, and I also want people, it sounds like the Diversity Inclusion Committee is going to expand a little bit to include some others. And I want to make sure that people understand that we will have one or two. It sounds like it may be beneficial to have 2 school committee representatives on that committee to take this and make sure it continue and see it through. So I will ask, Gloria, will you support 8 can't wait?
Yes.
Ming Chen, will you support 8 can't wait?
Yeah.
Leisha, will you support 8 can't wait?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
Megan?
Absolutely, yes.
And Chris?
Aye.
All right, and I absolutely want to support this discussion in diversity, equity, and inclusion because it goes so much deeper than even what we're talking about right here and now. So I guess that's a good place to end. This is not the end of the conversation. We need to finish our agenda tonight. Chris and Alicia, and we will put our heads together and try to get something scheduled as soon as possible for a next 8 can't wait meeting, as well as start to put together that panel discussion. So I thank everybody. This is a very beneficial conversation for all of us to have. Okay. And thank you. I've been trying to answer and respond to all of them. If anyone has further concerns, please feel free to reach out to an individual committee member. All of our emails are listed. I was even sharing my email in some of the conversations because I do want to follow up and make sure we get all those questions answered to the best of our ability. Bill, I think you're next with we need to take a vote on the board of directors.
Yes, historically, the superintendent of each member school district that participates in the Valley Collaborative is a member of the board of directors, and that vote, according to the Valley Collaborative bylaws, needs to be taken on an annual basis. So I'm asking that for one final year, you appoint me as that representative to the board of directors.
Chris, do
I
you
move
vote?
that we appoint Superintendent Bill Olson to the Valley Collaborative Board of Directors for the 2021 school year.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Gloria?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Aye. So it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Contract for Unit B.
Well, we're able to negotiate with Unit B a one-year agreement similar to Unit A, and would call for also a 2% cost of living adjustment. And so I'm recommending that you vote to approve that.
Okay.
I move that we approve the contract put forth for Unit B.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Chris?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aye. So it's a unanimous vote. I will send that back to Jen Burke tomorrow.
Thank you.
The administrative and exempt salaries, Superintendent.
Yes, I'm going to recommend that you approve a 2% salary increase for the administrators and exempt employees, that is non-union employees. That is an integral part of the financial model that the town has planned. As you know, the town manager supports that and is following through with all other town departments. So recommending that to you.
Do we have a list somewhere, Bill? I know we discussed in executive something, but do we have a list somewhere of all personnel covered under this?
Yes, I believe you had that for the packet at last meeting, in the executive session.
So it's no changes to that list. We're approving.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So all in favor of a 2% for administrative and exempt non-union personnel? Chris,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Abstain.
Gloria.
Aye.
Aye. So we have a 601 vote. Chris, do you have the warrants?
I do. A motion to approve payroll warrant number 2051 SP dated June 18th, 2020 in the amount of $2,145,740.31.
Second.
All in favor. Chris,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
Aye. So we are unanimous.
And motion to approve expense warrant number 2051 SE dated June 18th, 2020 in the amount of $246,701.63.
Second.
All in favor. Gloria,
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye. Sorry, mute.
That's okay. Alicia,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous on that. Megan, do you want to make the motion on the minutes since they're your babies?
Sure. So motion to approve regular session minutes dated May 18th, 2020 and June 1st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor. Chris?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous. Aye. Then we have, you want to do go ahead with the next one?
Sure. Motion to approve executive session minutes not for public release dated April 15th, April 21st, number one, sorry, that's not April, is it? Yes, it is. April 21st, number two, May 4th, May 18th, and June 1st, all 2020.
Second.
All in favor, Gloria?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
All right, and then we have, Megan, do you have the five or do you want me to read them?
You can read them. I wasn't
Okay.
sure. Are we only doing the five, or did you decide that you wanted to list them all but pending?
No, I'm just going to do the five. So we have executive session minutes for public release, and there are five of them that did not require legal counsel to weigh in on. And those would be dated July 15th, 2019, August 13th, 2019, session 1, December 9th, 2019, December 16th, 2019, and January 22nd, 2020. And those are for public release. My understanding is that if people would like access to those, they make their inquiry to NINA.
Motion to release.
Second.
Okay. So I'll do Chris,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Gloria.
Aye.
Okay, aye. So we have those 5 that will be, we'll send those over to Nina. Bill, do you have a personnel update?
Yes, a brief one. This particular meeting, 2 retirements, 2 resignations. I want to thank Mary Agneta for 8 years working as a teacher assistant, one of the unsung heroes in the school system, along with Barbara Chase, who is retiring as a special education van driver after 12 years. It takes a very special person to also be either a bus driver or van driver. And everyone matters in the education of a child and the interaction. And so we thank them greatly for their service.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion? Chris, do you want to read our motion to
Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, and an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the public body. The committee will not reconvene to open session.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Gloria.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Megan.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Aye. So we are adjourned. We will see you in executive session. This should be brief. Thank you all.
Night. Thanks.
Good night.
Megan.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Aye. So we are adjourned. We will see you in executive session. This should be brief. Thank you all.